Hello, buddy. Welcome back to 10 Man Collections. And today, I'll be reading another chapter out of this book, The Ghost of the Southern Mountains in Appalachia. It's called The Return of the Bell Witch in Addams, Tennessee. So, here we go. I think she is back, says Carnegie Bell, descendant of the man whose death the Bell Witch is said to have caused. Mr. Bell, one of the owners of Austin and Bell Funeral Home at Springfield, Tennessee, has had experiences that prove to him that the most famous witch of the 19th century is here and up to her old tricks. Not long before my mother died, she was frightened and called me to come over and check the house. She had heard a loud series of crashes and stayed in her bedroom calling me from the upstairs phone. Mother lived about 5 doors from our home. When I arrived, I checked every door. There are 7 outside doors and every one of them was locked. But when we went in the pantry, her best glassware had fallen from the shelves and laid all over the floor. The shelves ranged from 4 to 6 feet from the floor, and yet nothing was broken. If I haven't seen it for myself, I wouldn't have believed it. How could some malevolent being who first appeared almost 200 years ago still roam the area north of Nashville near Addams, Tennessee today? Yet that is exactly what seems to be happening. The account of the Bell Witch is probably the most widely documented story of the supernatural in America, not only because of the marker erected to her by the State of Tennessee Department of Archives and History, but because so many people have had a personal encounter with her. After causing John Bell's death, she announced she would be gone for a century. But that has passed. Now people like W.M. Eden, who owns a portion of the original Bell farm, John Bell's descendant Carnegie Bell, and numerous others believe the Bell Witch has come back just as she promised to do. Heaven knows that Kate had every reason to return in the first place, in the opinion of this writer. Few apparitions come back to haunt any of us for revenge. They simply happen to be there at the same place. We are at the same moment in time, but that does not include this particular spirit who some say suffered at the hands of one man. She returned for revenge. I believe in Kate, says W.M. Eden. He is a white-haired man dressed in a blue plaid shirt and overalls. She's never hurt me, but there have been nights when I have had to really fight just to keep the covers on my bed, and I have heard footsteps as near to me as the bedroom door. But let us go back many years into another state where the story first began. If the covers are coming off of me, I'll be scared to death. All right. In the late 1700s, a hard-working young man named John Bell lived alone in his cabin in Halifax County, North Carolina. He was not planning to remain alone, however, for he was engaged to a lady who owned a large tract of farmland. Her name was Kate Bates, a prominent name belonging to one of the first settlers of eastern North Carolina. After her husband's death, John Bell had stopped at her farmhouse now and then to help her with the settling of the estate. Less than a year after she had donned the black widow's attire, which only exaggerated her white skin and cloud of waist-length black hair, the pair announced their engagement. But scarcely were they engaged when John began to learn that the widow had a vile temper and sharp tongue. He searched for ways to break off with Kate, but she would not listen. The farm was more than she could handle alone, and she was determined that John Bell would become her husband and farmer. The unfortunate man, who had been blind enough to think this woman capable of any love or kindness, could only imagine what it would be like to live with her. He was in torment. Yeah, I probably wouldn't stand for that either. I'd probably pack up and go real quick. But anyway, on a winter afternoon, they had been out riding over Kate's farm and discovered that a building of hers needed repairing. John's tools were at his cabin, and when they rode over there to get them, the widow was thirsty, and she drew water from the well. A freak accident occurred, and she was struck in the forehead by a heavy bucket. She gave a little cry and collapsed. John bathed her face, but unable to revive her, began to fear she was dead. Yeah, it probably knocked her out just to get rid of her, and he was acting like something happened to her. He didn't know what was going on, but anyway. there's a picture of the Bell Witch plaque. I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, guys decided to go to Addams, Tennessee. There you go. All right, here you go. His next thought was that the others would believe he was to blame. Carrying the limp form down to his root cellar beneath the house, he left her there. Unlike some cellars of the sort, it could be locked from within the house by means of trap door. That night and all the next day, everything was quiet. Terrified over his predicament, he knew he must soon find a place to bury her. Then, as he prepared for bed, he heard a sound near his hearth just above the root cellar. It was a dragged sound followed by moans in the middle of the night. He was still awake, and it must have been 2 in the morning when he heard his name. "John! Help me! Please help me!" He tried to believe he had heard nothing, but the sounds went on. "I'm so hungry. Water, please." And so it went for the rest of the night. His dog began sniffing the crack around the trap door, and with a kick, John sent the dog hurtling out of the cabin. He examined all the possibilities. If he brought her up, she would cause a scandal because of his leaving her down there so long. The only way to keep her from doing that would be to go ahead and marry her, and that was the unthinkable. He knew she would never let him go, and her temper was such that she would have her own way or die in the attempt. Realizing this, he knew what he had to do. He did not open the trap door. The next morning he was exhausted, but he spent the day taking care of his animals and repairing some of his own farm buildings. But late afternoon, when he returned, the faint cries had ceased and all was quiet. When he cautiously entered the root cellar with a candle late at night, he found she was dead. Loading the body on the sled he used to haul firewood, he pulled it to the house and around back beside her own well. There he left an old half-blind crone who sometimes helped Widow Bates with the vegetable garden, discovered Kate the next morning. For several months it was as if a tremendous weight had been lifted from him. He met a kind, understanding young woman named Lucy Williams and soon proposed to her. John and Lucy Bell had not been married long when he decided to sell the farm in North Carolina and start a new life in Tennessee. Buying a 1,000-acre farm on the banks of the Red River, about 50 miles north of Nashville, not far from the Kentucky border, he brought his family to settle in Robertson County in 1804. But he was to have only a few peaceful years. Walking along while plowing one day, he looked over to see a monstrous, inky black bird with fiery eyes sitting on a fence post staring at him. He had never seen anything like it before. First of all, that is a nice piece of land he bought, 1,000 acres. I wish I had that. But anyway, you see a crow with fiery eyes. That means death coming towards you, in my case. But anyway, me understanding it. But anyway, even when he walked toward the bird did not move, but sat motionless, glaring fiercely at him. He shouted at, and the creature flew toward him, swooping down as if to attack, but swerving at the last second with a horrendous fluttering of wings. He passed above him so close that he was overwhelmed by the most dreadful stench, as it barely cleared the top of his head. That was the first particular event he would later remember. It is not easy to pin down when the scraping of pear tree branches against the large one and one half-story log house and other normal noises made a transition to sounds of the most eerie nature. According to one of his sons, Richard, he and his 3 brothers were asleep in the upstairs bedroom and awakened to hear the noise like an enormous rat gnawing on the bedpost. They got up to investigate, but as soon as the candle was lit, all was quiet and nothing could be seen. The moment the candle went blown out, the noise began again. This horrible gnawing sound was soon heard every night, and it moved from one room to the other in the Bell house. They came a series of most repulsive noises, as if someone was smacking their lips while they ate, alternating with loud gulps that resembled choking or strangling, as if it seemed that there were peace for a few hours in the midst of the family's relieved slumbers. The covers would be jerked off their beds as if snatched by some unseen hand. But worst of all, an invisible presence twisted and jerked the children's hair until they ran screaming in fright. At the first, the Bells said nothing to anyone about these events. I wouldn't blame them, nobody would believe them. Finally, John Bell told his close friend and neighbor Jim Johnson, and the Johnsons came over to spend the night. It was to be the most unpleasant night of their lives. They had no sooner retired than the noises started. It began with loud knocking, followed by gnawing, scratching, and smacking. The chairs in the Johnsons' bedroom overturned. Bed covers flew off. The Bell's daughter, Betsy, was slapped across the face by the visible hands, and the entire house was soon in pandemonium. I would not like it if a lady gets smacked in the face, but I would try to fight this demon. But anyway, the Johnsons could hardly be expected to keep all this to themselves, and when word was out about the strange happenings, the curious began to arrive from all over Tennessee. Some came to investigate, and others helped if they could. About this time, another mystifying spectacle occurred. Lights could be seen flittering through the trees in the Bell yard and across the fields of the farm. Now, the family began to try to talk to whatever it was by asking questions such as, how many people are in the room? How many horses are in the yard? Or whatever could be answered with a number of knocks. The answers were always correct, and then the thing begins to talk. Words first came in a harsh, disembodied voice that gradually gained strength and grew more feminine. It was soon apparent that the thing has a passionate hatred for John Bell, and whether it first revealed its identity to him or so, other members of the family all soon know it as Kell Bates' witch. When Bell first learned that he went into deep depression, not that he was the only person who was the object of her attentions, but it was for him that she reserved her most vicious acts, and now that she could be understood, her oath to kill him was unmistakable. But for many, it was a most entertaining phenomenon. The question often arose as to whether you could touch a ghost. Visitors to the Bell house were curious about this, and on one occasion, Calvin Johnson, who Kate frequently talked with, asked her if he could shake her hand. She was reluctant to do this, but finally agreed that she would do so if he would promise not to try to hold or grasp her hand. He stretched out his hand, and within seconds something softly lay in it, like the hand of a woman. No one doubted him who was watching his expression when it happened. His brother Jack made the same request, but Kate refused, saying, "No, I don't trust you. You are a grand rascal, Jack Johnson." Visitors sometimes found Kate embarrassing as she revealed their darkest secrets, poked fun at them, joined blasphemy in religious discussions, and when she raided a nearby steel house, she would keep everyone up at night and with her frightening oaths and drunken singing. Kate performed for a constant family of visitors, and about this time the entire family of spirits joined her at the Bell house. Now there were 5 disembodied voices, including Kate's, while the other 4 spirits came and went. Kate stayed with the Bell family, and particularly with John Bell, but she would never explain why she hated him so. 2 years went by, and John Bell began to suffer mysterious attacks in which his tongue would swell and stiffen in his mouth. He would be unable to eat or talk, and described the feeling as similar to having a sharp stick wedged crossword in his mouth. Kate would interrupt the concern of his wife and family when he was having these spells by laughing raucously as he suffered. His afflictions grew more frequent and more terrible, almost making him an invalid, and the witch cursed him viciously all the while. She definitely hates him, but you don't have to keep laughing at the dude for doing all that. But anyway, I'm going to call this part 1, and I'm going to be filming part 2 next, so stay tuned for that.